Hi everybody, it's Allison Haikila, and I'm so grateful that you're joining me today on my YouTube channel. We are going to make a really fun card today that's going to look as though we've done a lot of mixed media steps when actually we've only done a couple of really quick techniques. So why don't we get started? We're going to use one of my favorite 6x6 stamps. This is from Stampendous and it's called Mixed Mesh. We're also going to use a couple of stamps from this set. This is called Shell Beach, which is also from Stampendous. And we're going to use the Kalediacolor Denim ink pad. These ink pads are fantastic because they come in a rainbow of colors all in one case, and you can either use them separately or use them together. We'll be using them together today. So let's get started with our background. We need a piece of white cardstock, and we're also going to need a brayer, and we're also going to need to use ink potion number 9. This is going to help our colors move a little bit more together, a little bit easier, and it's going to blend them a little bit. So this is great stuff, especially when you're using something like the Kalediacolors on a brayer. It helps them move so much better. So what is cool about these pads is that they click together so that you can get nice coverage either on your background or on your brayer, like what I'm doing now. And you can see that the pads are smaller than my brayer, and that's all right because I can just go over it like this. Make sure I have a lot of ink on there. Make sure you always unclick that because you'll be able to close your lid and it will prevent your ink colors from blending together. And now what I'm going to do is just spray some of the ink potion number 9 right here on my brayer, just so that those colors move and stay wet just a little bit longer. And now we're going to apply it right to our background. Now this brayer I have not cleaned in a while, which is why you're seeing all of this texture, but I actually don't mind it at all. There we go. I think that looks good. Let's clean this up a little bit. We've got some excess ink on here that we don't want to get on our other things. There we go. I like that look. We're going for something that looks sort of mixed media and textured and kind of grungy, so this is perfect. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to take our mixed mesh stamp, and what I like to do when I'm working with 6x6 cling stamps is I actually put it right on my glass mat, right on my work surface, and then what we're going to do is stamp like this instead of the other way around. I find that it works a little bit better that way. I don't have to worry about pushing the whole stamp. Instead, I can place this wherever I want and just push it into my stamp, and it works out really well. So I am going to dry this really quickly with my heat tool, and then we'll come back and stamp the mixed mesh. Okay, so this is all dry, and we needed to make sure that it was dry because we're going to be embossing this stamp onto it. And if it would have been wet, then our embossing powder would have stuck to areas that we didn't necessarily want it to stick to. So just to be double sure, I'm going to use my embossing powder bag all across the whole thing, and then we'll be good to go. So now I have some VersaMark ink, and I'm going to stamp it right here. I decided that I wanted to use really this area here. So that's what we're going to really focus on inking up. This is a nice, sticky, clear ink, and it takes embossing powder really well. Gives us plenty of time to get our powder on there and work with it. Okay, so I have a lot of sort of empty areas where there's no ink here. So I'm going to use this area here for that side. I'm going to just lay this down, and you want to be careful that you're not moving it, that you're not shifting it, because then your impression won't be as good. You just want to generously rub across the entire piece of cardstock. And for this I'm using 110 cardstock from Recollections, which is what I usually use when I'm making my cards. Okay, that should be pretty good. You're not going to be able to see it on camera very well, but you can see that there's a couple of areas that are a bit darker. So I'm going to move this off to the side. And now what we're going to do is we are going to get our embossing powder out. And I have a piece of scrap paper. I always have a piece of copy paper nearby for embossing so that I can dump my powder right onto my piece and I don't have to worry about getting it all over my glass mat or anything else. So this is Ivory embossing powder from Stampendous. I love this color. Sometimes white is a little too harsh for me. So using this ivory is going to be really nice, and I think it's going to add to the beachy feel that we're going for with this project. Okay, so we've got that. And now I'm going to just turn on my heat gun and heat this up, and we'll be back in a moment. And we're back. So you can see that I have melted the powder, and it has this lovely sheen to it because embossing powder does this wonderful thing that when it melts it gets nice and shiny, which is one of my favorite things about it. I love the shine. It looks like enamel. So now, by just rolling out some color and adding this very texturized stamp, we have already created a look of a monoprint or a mixed media piece. It looks like we've done a lot of work and it was really very fast. So now what we're going to do is we're going to stamp out a couple of these shells onto some smooth Bristol paper, and we are going to color them in together. Okay, so I've got some VersaFine ink. I'm going to use my Zig Clean color markers, and let's get going. I have arranged my 3 stamps onto my Misty Door, and now I'm just inking them up with VersaFine ink in Onyx Black, because again, we're going to be coloring these with the Zig markers. So now I'm going to just shut the door and apply some good pressure here. And that looks perfect. I've got my 3 stamps separated just to make it a little bit easier when I color. So we're going to start here with the conch shell. So I'm going to move these off to the side, and I've got my zigs here, and we're going to start off with Pink Flamingo. We might want to wind up going with something that's a little bit darker in this area here, but we'll see. So again, I'm working with smooth Bristol cardstock. I love using Bristol when I'm working with my zigs, and we're just doing very, very loose coloring. We're not going to be exact. We're not trying to go for photorealism here. We're just making it nice and loose. Now I'm using Pink Haze, which is actually a new color for me. I just added to my collection of 80 recently, and I haven't even really gotten to play with this one yet. So you can see I'm just kind of going in a circular motion here, just blending those colors together. And I like working with the Bristol because it has the ink kind of sit on top for a while, and it just allows you to go in and move things around really easily. I am going to grab another color just to deepen it a little bit. We have light carmine here. This is a little bit darker than the Pink Flamingo, and I think that that's what it really needed. So you can see that it's just really loose. These stamps were actually designed to be used with true watercolor paints. So using a light, open, kind of soft, brushy technique with these markers is perfect for this. One more time with the Pink Haze, just to kind of blend those out a little bit more. And then that area is going to be pretty much done. Keeping it super soft and super loose. Just like that. Perfect. Now I think that we are going to go in with beige. And we'll start here and just kind of work our way back, again keeping it really loose. Doesn't need to be perfect. We're not going for photorealism. We just want to have some shading, and we just want to have some variation in color so that it's not totally flat. But you don't have to worry about light source necessarily, or making sure that there's enough light versus dark. It doesn't matter here. We're just going for a loose look. And now we're going to go in with some oatmeal. This is actually one of my most used colors. In fact, I had to repurchase this color because mine had dried up because I use it so often. Oatmeal is the perfect color to use if you need to dull a color down. If I thought that this pink shades of coral here were a little too vibrant, I would hit them all with my oatmeal and I would just dull it down with that. But in this case, I'm pretty happy with the way these colors look, so I'm not going to do that here. So now I want to have some highlights, so I'm going to go in with medium beige, and we're just going to blend that out a little bit just to kind of give us some high points. Super loose, super fast. There we go. Perfect. Now let's go on to the starfish. And we're going to stick to similar colors with this one. I'm going to start with I think I'm going to start now with some dark oatmeal. And try to mimic the texture that the stamp was drawn with. You can see how it's kind of bumpy and shaky. Do the same thing when you're coloring, because that's going to help make everything a little bit more cohesive. If you went in with super straight, smooth lines all around, it'll work, but doing it this way, kind of matching the strokes that the stamp was drawn with, will make it a little bit more cohesive. Just super bumpy. Now we're going to go back in with the beige, and again I'm going to just keep it bumpy, bouncing the brush up and down. It's one of the things that I really like about these markers is that they have an actual brush tip to them. There's fibers, so you can splay them out, see, just like that, and you get really wonderful textures that are a little harder to get, I find, with a non-brush tip marker. Look at that, that looks great so far. And now we're going to go in with oatmeal, and again just pouncing it, pounce, pounce, pounce. This way you kind of resemble the texture that's on the starfish. Here we've got smooth lines, right? If you imagined touching this shell, you would think that it would be pretty smooth, but this one we want it to look really bumpy. So that's the look that we're going for. That's why we're bouncing the marker. You're making the marker do what you would want your finger to do if you were actually touching this shell. And I'm going to go in with a little bit of vanilla, just so that we kind of knock back the little bit of white that we have showing. I don't really want it to be a bright white. There we go. Perfect. I just want to clean this off a little bit. It won't harm the marker if you have an older color on it that's a little darker than it, but I prefer to clean it off so that I don't accidentally mess it up later or mess up the next bit of coloring that I'm doing. Okay, now we're going to go in with this one. And I think that we will go in with deep brown. Now again, if you take a look at these lines, they have a little bit of a bump to them, but they're really smooth too. You have these smooth curves, so we're going to mimic that with our marker strokes. We're going to go right to oatmeal this time. And we're going to just blend those colors out a little bit, just like that. Again, following those lines that were drawn for you to kind of help you determine the texture of that stamp. And then let's finish it up with some of that vanilla again. So I don't really want it to be white. I want it to have a bit of a tone to it, a bit of a color, but it's super soft. You can see when I color it right on the page, it's really soft, but it just knocks that white back enough. There we go, that's our third shell. So I'm gonna just fussy cut these real quick and we'll be back in a moment. My pieces have all been fussy cut now, and I am going to take a brush tip Pitt pen, and from the back, I'm going to just go around the edges just a little bit so that I can blacken them. And the reason I do it from the back is because if I accidentally slip, I'll hit the back of the piece instead of what I just spent so much time coloring. Now with this, I gave it a semi-loose fussy cut. You can see some of the white purposely around it. Also the way this is drawn, you can see that there's actual breaks in the design. So I'm not too concerned, but 9 times out of 10, I do like to go around my cut images if I have a tighter fussy cut, just so that I get these edges nice and dark. It makes them look a little bit more finished and complete. Now we're going to arrange our shells, get our sentiment on a piece of paper, and adhere everything together. So I really like the way these kind of come together here, or we can go with it horizontally, which I think works too. Maybe we'll do that. I kind of like the look of that. I think we'll go with that. And then I have the sentiment that comes with the set that says life is better at the beach, and I'm going to take a piece of Neenah Desert Storm cardstock, and I'm inking my sentiment up with some more VersaFine ink in Onyx black, and I'm going to stamp it right here. You can see that I like to save all of my scraps because why waste them? So I think that what we're going to do is put it right here, and I'm going to tear the edges around it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to tear up away from me, just like this, to get a nice rough edge. You want to make sure that you don't actually tear your sentiment. Now I'm going to pull it towards me a little bit, and you can see that this is cleaner than this. I want it to have that rough edge here. See that? And then I'm going to bring it back, pulling it up away from the sentiment each time. And then this edge is going to stay straight because we're going to put it right here. But I think that it needs a little bit of ink blending. So how about we do that? I'm going to take my blending brush here, and I have some vintage photo distress ink, and very lightly just ink up those edges to bring out that rough edge that we just created. Just like that. Perfect. I think that looks great. Okay, so I've got a white card base right here, and we're going to apply that on there like that, and our card's almost done, guys. It's almost done. Okay, so let us get some adhesive and apply this. I have a very used bottle of Ultra Bond. My son was using this quite a bit for a paper project that he was making. He was actually building an R2-D2, three-dimensional R2-D2 out of paper, and he used this adhesive for the entire thing. So he did a lot of squeezing on this thing. So we're going to put that here, and I'm going to get a block to set on top of it so that it dries. And next we're going to stick this one down because it's in the back. Blending it out a little bit with my finger just so that it doesn't have like a glob anywhere. Just like this. Next we'll do the conch. And we're going to slip that underneath here. Take that seashell out in a moment. That looks good. Hold that whole thing down. Now we can just glue right on top. I store this upside down. It helps with keeping it from getting clogged, but every once in a while I do need to unclog it, so I have a pin handy at all times right on my desk so that if I have to unclog any of my adhesives, I can do it pretty easily. That goes for things like Nouveau drops and stickles and things like that too. It's always good to have a pin handy. And you could easily have put foam dots on here to give it some more dimension, but I wanted to keep it relatively flat. And for this, I don't even think that I want to add any color to the edges. I think I want to just leave it white. I like that. For this particular card, we're going to just leave it white. A little bit more glue, a little bit more clogging, but that's all right. Once it gets going, it gets going. There we go. Don't need too much. And we're going to apply it just like this. And this, my friends, is our finished card. Has a mixed media look without too many steps, without getting very messy, aside from this bit of ink staining I got on my finger at the very beginning of the video. Sorry you had to look at it the whole time, but that's it. Using a Kalediacolor ink pad will already give you a very cool background without any effort at all, and then using a very cool 6x6 stamp on top of that with some embossing, it gives you just a really neat look. So I hope that you've enjoyed this today. I hope that you'll subscribe to my channel by hitting the little bell at the bottom there. I'll have all of the information listed below. There'll be more information on my blog as well as photos. So I hope that you'll become a subscriber, and I hope you'll join me again soon. And I will see you guys next time. Have a crafty day.